Welcome to the Chat with Chou podcast, hosted by Chou Allegra, well-being and belonging consultant, best-selling author, and sought-after speaker. Join Chou as she connects with both new and familiar faces, showcasing their inspiring work in businesses. Together, we will explore insightful conversations, practical tips, and valuable resources aimed at fostering individual and collective growth, both personally and professionally. Let's embark on this journey towards greater well-being and belonging together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chat with Chou podcast. For September, I am interviewing people who I know, who I love, and who have stories and testimonies. I will frame that. They're not just the testimonies that can bring hope, healing, comfort, and peace to someone else. September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and so I know this topic can be hard for many of us. So while we're talking, if you feel triggered, first, if you're in the US, you can text or call 988. And if you're outside the US, feel free to send us a message. Feel free to pause this and come back to it. Our goal here is not to trigger pain, but it's to bring comfort, to bring healing, to let you know that you're not alone. With that being said, I have a beautiful friend of mine here, Kaylin. Thank you for being here, Kaylin. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making the time for this. And if you don't mind just, opening us up here by sharing a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Sure. So, thanks for having me. My name is Kaylin Jennings Knight, and let's see, where do I start? Because I wear many hats.
Yes.
I am a mom to 5 amazing children. I am an entrepreneur, a wellness advocate, and an essential oils educator. I also am a life purpose life coach. I am an author. I enjoy and love reading. I do my best reading and writing when I'm at the beach, relaxing. Um, and I'm also a school teacher. Something that I have gone into my second year of teaching, something that has been just a profound blessing that God has given me to be able to teach children and to be able to just be a blessing in their life.
Yeah.
I also have an amazing dog that we just got that I'm getting
Official.
adjusted to being a dog mom.
Mhm.
2 cats, Susie and Hamilton, 2 fish, and 2 hermit crabs. So yes, in addition to being a mom, being a teacher, being an author and an entrepreneur, this is one of my favorite topics. I do love to talk about suicide prevention, and in honor of Suicide Prevention Month, this is such a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
No, thank you for being here. Saying now it's a full house. I know when you and I were talking or texting over the weekend, you were just testing out the dog. I guess now it's official. The dog's an official member of the family.
Yes.
The family has, it's getting bigger and bigger. It's so beautiful. Yeah, thanks for being here. And yes, suicide prevention is a topic that's so dear to your heart, and something that you didn't share, if I might, probe there, is that you do a lot of work around this. You support other people who experience loss because you know what it feels to be there, to go through that. If you don't mind, if you're comfortable, if it's not, this is too touchy, you can say no, I'll pass. But if you're comfortable just sharing the organizations that you collaborate with, that you volunteer with, that you work with to promote suicide prevention and actually comfort and support for those who experience suicide loss.
Yes, so I am a peer mentor with the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, the TAPS organization. I walk with widows who lose their husbands their first year of losing their husbands to suicide loss, being able to help them go from a place of just unexplainable pain to seeing them a year later in post-traumatic growth. And being able to see them accomplish their dreams and heal inside and out. Also, with the Zoe Freedom Foundation out here, it's a Christian organization for anyone who's lost a loved one to overdose. That has been a wonderful journey, being able to facilitate a grief group with a lot of different people. So in that grief group, I have been able to watch women and men, no matter who they've lost, a friend or family member, to be able to start that group in pain, feeling like I'm not sure, whether I belong, because we know that even with overdose, substance abuse loss is a stigma with that associated with suicide loss. So we're kind of like in the same boat. So that's been
Mhm.
something that's been interesting as well, being able to help people in that area who've had the substance abuse loss as well.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing about those two organizations. So I know with TAPS, it's national, it's across the US, right? And
Mhm.
so the second one that for supporting those who have lost someone to overdose, it's regional. It's based you and we didn't share this before. So I'm coming in and recording this from Pennsylvania, and you're in Virginia. So that second, the Christian organization that helps people,
Yes.
who supports people after who have lost someone from overdose, or that's just for Virginia, correct?
Yes. That
Okay.
one is based in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Okay, and we'll make sure that to add those links, for resources, for notes, in the notes for the show as well, so people can access that. So thank you for sharing about that. And so speaking about how important this is to you, it's so important to you that you actually wrote a book, which I was honored and so privileged to publish for you. And so if you don't mind showing that book there, oh there we go. We'll put the link to it though. Like the background is hiding it. But tell us more about the book. Tell the title of it and why you wrote it. What can people get out of it?
So it's called Destination Hope, a 31 prayer journal to heal from grief and suicide loss. I wrote this book to share my story of loss, sharing my story of overcoming loss,
Mm,
sharing my story of being a 27-year-old pregnant widow, which
mm,
is like an oxymoron. You think of widowhood and you think of motherhood should
mm,
never mix. But unfortunately, when I lost my husband, that became a reality for me. So writing this book is to share hope with other widows who've lost their husbands unexpectedly, those who have lost their husbands to suicide, and those who are walking through grief, the pain of grief, the good, bad, and ugly in grief. And I know many people probably say, well, what is the good in grief? Because I only see the bad and the ugly and the pain. Well, in my book, I break all of that down, starting from day one all the way to day 31, sharing my story of how God took me on a journey of healing me. Um, all of the things that He did in my heart, all of the things that He did in my mind, the mental health effects, and from the trauma of losing my husband to dealing with navigating motherhood with a newborn and three small children at that. I was trying to just figure everything out within myself, within this new role that I was in, and this new word that I just
mm,
absolutely couldn't stand. And I mean, I had to really come to grips with saying even the word widow because it was painful, but yes, so my book covers all of that about my story and the 31 days that God took me on to bring me to where I am now.
yeah. And it's such a powerful story. And what I love about you, and which kind of transcend to how you even wrote the book, it's not just, oh, look at my story, look at what I've done. It's like, look how I've navigated so you can too. And it's so easy. A lot of, and I've met people, I do grief work, and I've met people who will say, well, I don't want another book, another article on grief. But that's what community does, right? Like they're just, oh, somebody's grieving, here's a book. But the beautiful thing about your book, what makes it different, is that it's not just a book for you to read about what you should do. It's a book to read about what is possible, to give you hope. And that's but definitely that destination hope. But then the journal entries allows you to process, to purge for yourself, to release those emotions. So you're not just reading a book and then, and suffocating, if you want, or suppressing, maybe it's a better word, but suppressing all this emotion that you have because they're like, oh, now I have to do it like their way. No, you give the readers opportunities to process in their own terms, right? And not because just because sharing your story does not mean that your story their story doesn't have to mimic yours. You're giving them opportunity and the freedom, permission even to grieve in their
Right.
own way, while still knowing and hopefully embracing that hope is possible, that healing is
Right.
possible. Yeah,
Right.
beautifully done, beautifully done. And it's sad. It's sad to even experience that, even like you said, being, very young in your mid-20s and you're a single mom, a widow, and pregnant at the same time. It's like, make it make sense, right? It doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we are grieving, those are the things that we grapple with. Like, this does not make sense. And sometimes it's okay to just acknowledge, and then not, you don't have to get there just today. If you're not there yet, it's okay. But many of
Right.
us, as part of grief, we often get to the point where, like, it's okay that this does not make sense. It's not okay that it
Right.
happened. We're still hurting. We're still grieving the person that we love. We're still missing them. But
Right.
accepting the thing as they are sometimes it becomes a bigger, breakthrough, if you want, a bigger steps towards our healing, because now we
Right.
can work on it, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So,
you're so right about that.
mhm,
I know when in the early parts of my grief, I remember hearing people say, oh, get this book or get that book. And you're right. I had a lot of grief books. I had a lot of books on grief, but there was none like the one that I created.
mhm,
I started journaling a lot, and that was like a way for me to be able to get my feelings on paper, for
mhm,
me to be able to express. That was one way I was able to express how I felt. And that was the whole goal of me being able to express how I feel, not read something, suppress it, and try to package it up or make it look like the way someone else was telling me, but giving
mhm,
someone that safe space, be able to say, you know what, this is how you feel. This is how I feel.
mhm.
Now, where can we go from here? You know,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
what it's all about, being able to express, because that is the number one thing I could say going through grief
Mhm,
is how to express how I was feeling and what do I do with those emotions? How do I express it and what do I do with it?
mhm,
Because you can go around some people and they may feel uncomfortable with you crying. I used to be the one that was in the grocery store with my kids and I would hear
mhm,
a song and just break down and start crying and, just be emotionally all over the place. Or I would get in the car and say, okay, today's the day. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be good. 5 minutes down the road, I'm a hot mess, crying and just trying to get it together. But whenever I was able to just sit and go before the Lord and just really just be real and raw and able to put that on paper, I don't know, it just felt liberating for me. I felt free to be able to, with no judgment, and to be able to say, you know what? I don't know how I'm gonna get through this, but I was able to get it on paper. And God, I know that you have a way. You are going to provide a way for me to get to a safe space. And
yeah,
until I get there, God, I'm just going to continue to trust you and I'm going to keep journaling.
mhm,
And that's what I did. And then to just look back on just all the journal entries and just be like, wow, I remember just being in the trenches of,
mhm,
wow, I couldn't even get up today. Or having those moments where, I felt like, should I even still be here? Do I even
mhm,
have a purpose? I have my kids. Everybody would say, well, you have your kids to look forward to. You have your whole life. You're 27, you're young. But in the middle of that pain, that grief, that pain in the bottom of your stomach, that one
mhm,
foot in the past with my husband, the one foot in the reality right now of the pain of him being gone, and just envisioning the future that I'll never have with him anymore. That is hard. It is just hard and it's unimaginable. And how many other women are feeling like that? How many other women are just waking up every day and they have that thought, should I even still be here? They're just on autopilot. I'm just going, and to know that those thoughts, they're real. How you feel is real, but you don't have to stay there. That's not the main place that you're going to get to. That's not the final destination. It's just a traveling place, but it's not a place to stay in.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for just sharing your heart and your brilliance, all in once. And we'll get to talk a little more about this later, how people can connect and get your support. So, by just a heads up, so if you don't know, Kaylin's also part of a team under the Grace and Hope for Families. So we'll talk about that in a little bit towards the end. But so for this journey, right, as you're writing this book, you are like say sharing your story and you're journaling with the book if you want, right, for your own experience. What did you learn about yourself for the whole process of the grief, but also the process of writing the book?
So I learned that I was resilient. I didn't feel resilient, but I learned later on that all that I had gone through, it didn't break me. It didn't break me down to stop me, but it broke me so that God can mold me into a woman of resilience to keep going. Because there were a lot of days I did not want to keep going, but I had something in me that say, you can't give up. You can't give up. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. And just holding on to that little glimpse of, I got to keep going, whether I have had a shower today, whether I've eaten today, whether I don't feel like doing it, I just got to keep going. And I've learned that how I feel is real and it's valid. It's not to be dismissed or to be invalidated. A lot of times in grief, I found myself worrying about how others would perceive me in grief, worrying about how people were going to pretty much, if I was out in public and I just felt like I was about to have a breakdown, I just would start panicking because I'm worrying about, oh my goodness, people are going to start seeing me break down. So I'm trying to hold it together while my eyes are welling up. And, even something as simple as getting invited to a wedding or a baby shower, I knew inside I didn't want to go. Not that I wasn't happy for them, but because I was grieving and I didn't know how to say no. I learned later on that no is a complete sentence and it's okay to say no. It's okay to have boundaries for how I feel because it's my feelings and it's okay. It's not okay to validate someone else's emotions or feelings in the moment and ignore mine. That's not okay. That is not healing. That is hindering myself, and I had to learn that. I had to learn boundaries. I had to learn that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay in that place because staying in that place is very dangerous. And that's also something too that I had to come to grips with. You know what? I am not okay and I need to get some help, because as a Christian, I was praying, I was doing all the things and I was feeling like, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. But if you find yourself getting to a place of needing more help, if you need to address the mental health challenges, if there's a chemical imbalance, that's okay. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're less than a mom or less than a woman. If you're in ministry and you've experienced a suicide loss and you're worrying about what other people are going to think, and you decide, oh no, I don't want to get help, you're doing a disservice to yourself. So I had to learn to be okay with me and how I felt at the moment and knowing that God still loves me. But he doesn't want me to stay in a place that's not fruitful for him or that's going to hurt or hinder me because he loves me enough, So that was a hard thing for me too, of learning boundaries, implementing them in my grief journey, being able to say no, knowing that no is a complete sentence without an explanation, being able to go out and get help and being okay with it, despite what people may have thought, what they may have said, and just knowing that, you know what, however it looks for the moment, that's what I need. Addressing those mental health issues of, insomnia, dealing with PTSD, dealing with depression and all of those different things, because those things are real, and a lot of people have a notion that, we can just pray them away. And that's not a reality. We're not just going to pray them away. If you need medical help, go and seek medical help for your mental health. God loves us enough that he wants you to be well, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And that's a part of being well. So,
Well said. Well said. A woman after my own heart, right? And because there's so much we can have, honestly, hours and hours of conversation about how the church handles mental health. Maybe that we have to come back to that. You and I have to do that. One of those another interview on just on that. Because I think, yes, society as large does not know how to deal with grief. Right. And we don't know how to respond. And because we don't know how to respond, sometimes we pull away, not realizing that in the moment what somebody might have needed from you is just to be present, just to say, I see you, I hear you, I'm here.
right.
Because no, we can't take it away, we can't bring the person back, right? And so sometimes I just need you to be there to know that I am not alone for this journey. And because the as a society, not just you in the US, I'm rich from Africa, so I've seen this across, across the continent, even, I have clients all over the world. And what I've seen is that we don't always know, as human beings, we don't know how to embrace uncomfortable emotions.
Right.
And so where actually crying is a healthy release, because there's actually cortisol in the tear duct. So when you think about it, when you're crying, you're releasing the stress hormone that could actually be impacting your health later. It's good to do that. And I understand too that, it's not always comfortable to do it in public. Well, obviously, yeah, you want to have some of the privacy of your own space and, be around people you trust and love. But if as a society if we could embrace uncomfortable emotions, then the rest of us will not feel like we have to manage other people's reaction to our emotions when we're grieving. It's not, it's hard and it's painful to feel like, oh my goodness, here comes another wave, because grief will come in waves. Sometimes it's a reminder of a song, a scent, it could be, like you say, being in an environment where people are celebrating. You're like, well, my loved one is not here to celebrate with me, right? And
Right.
so if society as a whole, been more supportive, more inclusive, if you want, of emotions, then shouldn't have to be able to think about managing people's reactions to our emotion when we just need that release. Right?
Right.
It's hard to give yourself the space and the permission, space and the permission to grieve when others are so judgmental, so critical of your grief response. Right.
Right.
And that's a societal thing that, we have to, so much more we can do that. And it's even harder in the church when it comes to, when people don't always realize in general that grief will also impact your mental health. Like you said, for yourself, you've been in a situation where, like, I don't know if I want to be here. It's hard to be here right now. Right. Grief might bring that depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, and other mental health challenges that needs to be addressed. We all believe, over both those of us in the fifth community, shift a little bit. We believe in prayer, but also believe that, God put people in our lives, in our path, in the society in general, to help us through those things. And we're so
Right.
quick to dismiss people's emotion. And mostly when I find it's because we ourselves are uncomfortable with it. And instead of allowing people to process, we go and, we dismiss them. Then that becomes even harder for the person that's grieving, that's hurting, even if no, they cannot. I don't want to say they cannot heal, they will heal. No, I believe that I've seen that. But my point, becomes harder for them to get towards the healing because now they feel shunned from the community from which they need to be receiving support from. We can do better. We
Exactly.
should be do that better as a society, as fifth communities. We should be doing better.
Right. I
So
agree.
as and you've grown so much for all of that. And so I think you really kind of shared some of the ways that you've grown, setting boundaries. Like sometimes, and those are the good things that come out of grief, right? You're seeing people like, no, I don't see good right now. What are you talking about? I'm grieving. I don't see good. But sometimes the good is how we grow. As an individual, like you said, being able to set boundaries, saying no to people, right? Allowing yourself the space to heal and reaching out for help. People see
Mhm.
it as which that's reaching out for help is a weakness. Actually, it's a strength. I often say that only strong people know when they've done everything they could do on their own, and now to get to the next level, they need the help of others. That is strength.
Exactly.
It takes courage to ask for help. It takes insight to realize that you need help, right? And it takes perseverance and, to follow through when you do get help. So there's nothing weak about that. That's all strength all along, right? So thank you again for just kind of, bringing those things to light, the growth that can come through grief. And you shared a lot about where you were finding your faith, your strength was through your faith. But what are some words of encouragement that you might have for someone right now who's thinking, oh my goodness, I've lost someone, and I'm grieving really hard. And maybe it's a man, maybe it's even a child. We don't often talk about grief for kids. So yeah, as you were grieving, your kids were grieving too. So maybe, speak to that parent who's there, having to handle having to process their own grief while supporting their kids, supporting the rest of the family as well.
So one thing I could definitely say, if I could go back and tell my 27-year-old self, you are not alone. Because many times I felt like that. I felt like I was alone, that I had absolutely nobody. Could walk into a room full of people or be out somewhere, and I would still feel alone. And that is a complete lie. You are not alone. I know it sounds very cliche, but God is with you. And when I look back, God was with me every step of the way. Even the times that I didn't even have the words or the strength to pray, all I could do was cry. All I could do was lay on the floor. All I could do was hold my Bible and just cry and just think, when is this going to end? When am I just going to just stop going through these motions, these grief waves, the up and down, And it was in those small moments of just small glimpses of peace where I didn't cry as much, or I laughed on a day. And then I felt bad because I'm like, why am I laughing? But it was in those moments, God was still there. Or when I would be certain places and people would give me a word of encouragement, just to say, you're loved, or you're okay. Or I would go to different events. And even when I got connected with TAPS, I mean, that was truly something special. I had got a mentor when I was in TAPS, and she was amazing. She would text me every day. We would talk all the time. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't want to talk to this girl. Like, I'm hurting. I don't want to talk to anybody, And she would always tell me, I'm not alone. She'd always pray for me. She would send me scriptures sometimes and just different things. And I just was like, I'm just not there with all of that right now. But she was sowing seeds in me that would later reap. And what I see today, even 8 years out, and my grief, what I see today. And, it was just something just to know you are not alone. It's so powerful. In the moment, you feel like you're so alone, but you're not. God is right there. He has his arms wrapped around you. You are not alone. And I mean just that phrase alone, it brings me so much comfort to know. And I can just thank God for God, you were just there for me, even when I felt like I had nobody, in that midnight hour when I had insomnia and couldn't sleep. And, my daughter was up and my kids were sleeping, and I was in a routine of, it's 3 a.m. and I can't sleep. My kids have to be up at 7 and be to school. It was in those times when, I didn't have the strength to go to the grocery store, and somebody blessed me with groceries. It was just in the little things that God did. He was still there. He was still there. Something else I would tell parents is parents and children, they grieve differently. I was in the thick of my grief. When I look back, it seemed like my kids were normal. Like they really weren't grieving. I mean, they had times where they cried and said things, but to me, it seemed like they were normal. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to cry in front of them because they seem fine, which is not good, because you want to always model emotions to your kids, healthy emotions. I'm a firm believer that every interaction with your child is a teachable moment. When your child sees you cry, that is a moment of opportunity to teach them. I'm crying because I'm hurting, and it's okay. My kids didn't see me grieve in a healthy way. Because I'm a firm believer that there is two ways to grieve, healthy and unhealthy. It's no such thing as a good way or a bad way. It's a healthy way and an unhealthy way. And I had a lot of unhealthy ways that I grieved. And my kids seen that. And I was modeling an unhealthy way to them. I was saying, oh, I'm fine. I'm okay. I've got to be strong because I've got, everybody telling me, be strong. You've got these kids. You can't break down. You got to keep going. And that was a very dangerous thing I was doing. And later on, I paid for that in my body through my health because I suppressed it. I was like, oh, I'm good. I can just keep going. I'm just going to go in the bathroom and cry when my kids don't see me. I'm just going to hold it in and just put my face on. And that is very dangerous because what are you teaching your kids? If your children are hurting, you want them to come to you. You want to embrace them, just like God does with us, the Father's love. He wants us to come to him. We have to model that with our kids because we don't want our kids to suppress how they feel. We don't want them to say, oh, you know what, I'm hurting, but I don't see mommy cry. I don't see mommy express how she feels. So I'm just going to hold it in. And what does that do to our kids? Their mental and emotional health. What does it do to their physical bodies? So I would say a family that grieves together will get through it. Just like, the saying goes, the family that prays together stays together. A family that grieves together will get through it together. It will look very different. I had my days where I was okay, my kids weren't okay. I had my days where I wasn't okay, my kids were okay. And just learning that balance, asking for help, saying, you know what, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to start. There are so many resources out here for parents that are grieving and for families. And I do believe that when you look at it as a family unit, just for example, if everyone is, in a car accident, you're not going to go to the emergency room and just get seen for yourself. If your kids are in a car, everyone's going to go. So grief not only affects just the adults, but it affects everyone in different ways. And it's okay to get help for your kids. My daughter did play therapy, which was amazing for her. I learned that she had memories of stuff that day that my husband died that I didn't even know that she even remembered, and just imagine she was walking around holding that in, and she was having issues at school emotionally, going under the table, crying, breaking down, not feeling safe. She, because her world was just thrown upside down, you know, um, not being able to really express how she was feeling. She had all these big emotions and didn't know how to express it. And I didn't know how to help her, but play therapy was able to help her to be able to express it, number one, to be able to get it out. And number two, able to put a name to it, to say, you know what, when you're feeling like a soda bottle, you're feeling angry, or you're having some anxiety, you're having things. So that's one thing I always tell parents. Make sure that you don't just address maybe your children and neglect yourself, because a parent has to be well to show up for your kids. Don't just neglect yourself for them, but everybody should get the help that they need because it's so important. So if I could go back and tell my 27-year-old self, I would say, you know what, we're all getting help. Mommy's not going to fake it till I make it, because, I know we live in a culture where, you fake it till you make it. You just keep going. We're in a microwave culture. Everything has to be, oh, he's gone. You just got to just keep it going. You can't pause life. We just have to, no, go get the help that you need. Because if you're not doing it, you're going to hinder yourself. You won't be able to get to a place where you can heal properly and to be able to express and to be able to thrive and become resilient. I truly believe that people that have experienced grief, the end goal is resilience. And that looks different for everybody. The journey looks different, but the end goal is the resilient, that post-traumatic growth, to get there, to be able to say, you know what? I went through this, but it didn't define me. Grief is a destination. Grief is a journey, not the end destination. The destination is resilience. It's healing. It's spiritual wellness, emotional wellness.
Yeah, well said, well said. And thanks for even, sharing the points that you did about supporting the child, supporting, and not faking it in front of our kids. And I think as human beings, we are faking it until we make it, because we've seen people who are supporting us, who are taking care of us, the adults in our lives, faking it until we make it. And now we are just perpetrating that same unhealthy
Mhm.
habits,
Yeah.
right? And guess what? Unless we break the cycle by doing something different, our kids are going to be doing the exact same thing.
Right.
We talk about teaching our kids how to brush their teeth, right? Because you need to do so you don't lose your teeth. But
Mhm.
nobody, no, I'm not saying nobody, many of us have now become more aware of this. But I think as a society as large, we don't do well, or we could be doing better about teaching our kids about healthy emotions, right? About, taking care of their mental health. And you think about health this way with your teeth, or, the rest of your body. It's not that, it's a continuum. And some days where our, teeth will be fine. And then one day I'm like, oh my goodness, I think something is loose, right? Oh, I have a cavity. I take care of it to go back to my teeth being healthy. So it's a continuum. And just as no mental health is the same way. And prevention is always the best medicine, right? So if we can teach our kids, it's okay to express yourself. It's okay to have emotions. Then we don't have children who bottled up emotions and then they become explosive, in the teenage years or even as adults. Right? So it all starts
Right.
with, just like we're teaching them the ABCs and everything else you're teaching them now, really being mindful, or also teaching them mental
Mhm.
hygiene, emotional hygiene, how they can take care of themselves. And it starts by not just saying it, but modeling it. And I
Right.
can go on and on, but even just how we do self-care in general. Many of us were, or maybe some of you or still are, walking to the grind and not taking time to relax, because that's how we saw a mom or grandma, great grandma would do the exact same thing, right?
Mhm.
And then we just like, well, that's what women do. Or maybe as men, we're like, I have to keep providing, which I totally understand that. There's nothing bad in that, unless when we start doing it without realizing, or without prioritizing our well-being. So then you're taking 2, 3 jobs to put meat on the table, but your family never sees you. And maybe you're doing that because, again, your dad, your granddad, your great-great-great-dad had done the same thing. So it needs to start. Change starts with us. Healing starts with us. And in the fifth community, we talk a lot about breaking generational curses. Yes, we'll pray it out. Yes, I get the prayer and fasting. I totally believe in that. But I also believe in modeling that, in changing our mindset, how we
Right.
see things, right? And literally renewing our minds so that we see things in a healthy way, and then following through with new habits that actually breaks the cycle.
Right.
But again, we can go on and on about that as well. So let's kind of bring this to close here. Where can people find your book?
So you can find my book on Amazon. You can type in the title of my book or my name. You can also find my book on my website at www.kaylinjknight.com. Um, you can, yep, those are the two places you can find it.
And we'll be sure to put the links to the link to the Amazon page for your book, in the show notes, but also the link to your website. And I mentioned earlier, so I was giving you a heads up that Kaylin is also part of our team with Grace and Hope for Families. So if you are new to me and only maybe know me as under Grace and Hope Consulting, which is an umbrella organization, but we have out of Grace and Hope Consulting, we have an initiative called Grace and for Families, where we support people more in the individual life, if you want, so in the personal life. So people who are experiencing, this for single parents, blended families, people experiencing chronic illnesses or disabilities, and or youth and the families who to protect and support their mental health. So that website is graceandhopeforfamilies.org. You can go there and check out more about that. But I'm bringing this up because as part of that organization under Grace and Hope for Families, Kaylin mentors and support and or single parents as well. So we actually are launching relaunching a single parent support group, and that's starting here September 12th, I believe is the 12, I believe. Yeah, it's the first group. It's available. You can register on Eventbrite. We'll put the link on that as well. So we hope that this was helpful. This was inspiring, not just inspiring, but was gave you hope, that this gave you some peace in this moment, right? That this gave you open your eyes to what grief is, what it can do, and how it can impact you, but still knowing that it's just a journey and destination. Like she said, destination is, it's the resilience, it's the hope that you need to get to that resilience. So we'll put the links there. Please share with, sharing is caring, and many of us, if not all of us, probably know someone who's impacted by grief, who are impacted with suicide loss. Maybe as a parent just trying to navigate their own emotions alongside navigating helping the kids, which we'll have to do one on single parenting, just for that angle, right? So share this out to someone else who can benefit from it. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you, Kaylin, for making time to do this with me. Thank you for all of you listening or watching, for supporting the show by your attention, by paying attention and connecting here, but also by sharing it out. Until next time, be well so you can do well, work well, and lead well. Bye, Kaylin. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Chat with Chou podcast. We hope today's episode inspired and informed you on your journey towards growth. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow Chou Allegra on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and more resources. Until next time, take care and keep striving for well-being and belonging in all areas of your life.